and welcome everyone to another Women's Health Tech Wednesdays. I am your host, Meena Joshi, and today we will be bringing on a very special guest, Joanna Campbell, who is a health economics and outcome research therapeutic area lead at AbbVie. As you know, we love questions here at Women's Health Tech Wednesdays. So if you have any for Joanna during our conversation, please utilize the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen, and we'll make sure that we carve out some time towards the end of our discussion to get your questions answered. So with that, we'd like to formally bring on our guest, Joanna. Hi, Joanna. Thanks so much for being here today.
Hi, Nina. I'm so glad to join you today for this conversation and to participate in Women's Health Tech Wednesdays. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. So maybe as a way to kind of kick things off, since this is Women's Health Tech Wednesdays, of course, the first thing I have to ask you is, what does Women's Health Tech mean to you personally?
So I think, as so many of the other ladies who have participated suggested, it means so many different things, right? It means how can we as women harness all of these new emerging digital and communication technologies to address really pressing healthcare needs for patients, for healthcare providers, for our society at large? How can we look at using these technologies to address issues that are particularly important to women, who I think historically have maybe not received as much attention as some of the issues that have been more prevalent in kind of male populations and male-dominated societies have not been part of the conversation. So I think it's both bringing these questions to the fore and making sure that we're harnessing these tools to address them in the most creative, innovative, efficient way possible.
Love that. That's a beautiful definition. So comprehensive. That's incredible. And kind of on that note, would love to really just learn a little bit more about yourself and kind of your journey into this healthcare space.
Sure, and I would like to say that I've had maybe a slightly roundabout journey. I don't know that it's pretty classic in that sense. So I started as my PhDs in economics. I'm actually a labor economist.
Oh wow!
And so when I was thinking about the questions that I thought were interesting, labor economics is really about the study of human behavior. How do various incentives change the choices that people make, and those choices can vary very, very widely. People think about it very classically in the sense of employment. It can also be family formation. It can be healthcare giving decisions. It can be health behaviors. And that was really what brought me to the healthcare arena, using the tools that they teach in labor economics to think about the decisions that people make about their health, the decisions that people make about healthcare use, the decisions that people make about the healthcare, that they provide to others. And that was what my dissertation was on, about informal caregiving for frail elderly people. And so I started in academia, working in a cross-functional setting in a medical school. I started at UTMB, which is one of the UT medical schools in Galveston, Texas. And then I went on to consulting, and I spent 4.5 years in pharmacoeconomic consulting. So I did a combination of cost effectiveness modeling and health policy work. And after that time, I wanted to go in-house, and I ended up working for Allergan, which was subsequently acquired by AbbVie. And so I've kind of touched all of the different parts of the healthcare research space: academia, consulting, and industry. So it's been an interesting journey, but I wouldn't have done it any other way.
That is so incredibly unique. And as you were kind of describing, and I think at least for me, when I hear labor economics, there's a lot of things that come into mind, but I think the way you really teased out the healthcare lens, and I think just broader decision-making in general, I think is so relevant, right? When we kind of think about so many aspects of healthcare. So that's such a unique lens that you could kind of take with you to all of these subsequent positions, which is pretty incredible. What was kind of the catalyst for you to move in-house, kind of coming from more of an academia initial start to your career?
So I think when I started working in academia, I was in a great place. The people were wonderful. I learned so much about working on important questions from a cross-functional lens. But academia is a very specific kind of way of working. You go fairly narrow, very deep. In terms of what you're working on, it's very much what's driven by your funding decisions. And I think kind of temperamentally, I wanted to maybe work at a quicker pace. I wanted to work on areas where I could see a more immediate impact of the research that I was doing. And consulting is a really good place to do that. The work is very fast. The questions are very actionable. The research that you do has an immediate impact. And so that was a catalyst there. And then after 4.5 years, I realized that I enjoyed the research, but it was a little bit lacking in terms of the larger strategy and how the work and the projects that I was working on really fed into a larger question and ultimately impacted patients' lives. And that was kind of the catalyst for my move to industry. And that's really what I very much enjoy about the job that I have now.
Absolutely. I think that makes a lot of sense about, finding opportunities where you can kind of play to your particular strengths and how you want to work while still being able to drive impact. So I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think kind of on that note, for you, how is just the lens through pharmacy, what are some of the things that pharmacy is really poised to be able to do to kind of drive larger healthcare change?
Sure. And I think that, you can approach that question in a couple of different ways. There's, the very direct route, pharmaceutical companies make medications or, device companies design products that ultimately get used to improve patients, quality of life, that increase their life expectancy, that make patients better off. And in so doing, we not only improve the lives of our patients, but the lives of, society as a whole. As a caregiver, we make the healthcare system more efficient, all of those kinds of things. But I think that there is a lot of research that is done within industry, within pharmaceutical and device companies that has a broader implication and can serve as, a broader catalyst for change more generally. And so it's not just the medications that we make or the devices that we make, it's a cross-functional collaborations that we take part in. It's our voice, within the health policy space that elevates, the voice of the patient or leverages the voice of the patient into that larger system. It's about
looks like I lost Joanna. Let's see if she can hop back on. Right when she was getting into it. Make sure that she is still online. Okay,
so sorry, quite a technical glitch.
It happens. This is a technical Zoom world we live in, so no worries at all.
And I don't know how much of my previous answer you missed, so tell me where I stopped and I can pick up again.
Yeah, so I think you're talking about, of course, the obvious implications or the obvious impact that pharma can make with just being able to have drugs that can, make an impact. But you were also talking about the in-house research and some of those initiatives that also kind of take place within a pharma company that have those broader implications.
Right. So I was saying that there's a lot of research that takes place in healthcare, in industry in general, so pharmaceutical medical devices that have broader implications that can be used outside of the medical space. But more broadly, I was talking about the fact that we engage in a lot of cross-functional collaborations. We have a seat at the health policy table. We affect or we provide input into the decisions the society makes generally about how we choose to spend our money, how we choose to elevate, the voice of the patient and address those needs. And it's not just about the medications, it's also about healthcare more generally, how our products are used within the broader healthcare space. It's about the other parts of the healthcare infrastructure that are equally important. And that can be, hard things like, hospitals or other care settings. It can be soft things like caregiving support. It can be, what do we as a society do in terms of funding some of these other ancillary resources like, childcare, elder care, education, that all together, impact, the healthcare of our patients.
Absolutely. I think that it's really interesting because I feel like whenever people hear cutting edge or all of these, amazing solutions, it's easy to kind of think of small, scrappy startup, which definitely is the case. But I think, really with what you're talking about goes to show that any organization can really, do the work to provide a lot of really great impact and a lot of positive change. So I think it's really amazing to hear that.
Thank you. And definitely, I think, that it takes all kinds of organizations and all kinds of people to affect change. There's a small scrappy startup, there's the people that are doing work in the academic labs, and then they're kind of the bigger companies with the infrastructure that can be leveraged to really move things forward. And, we all work together collaboratively.
Absolutely. I love the interconnectedness of everything, right? To be able to make something meaningful. So I love that. And you had spoken a little bit earlier, about when you were kind of describing women's health tech, and you had kind of talked about being able to have, more or less a seat at the table, right? Like just being able to have spaces where there are more women, where there's more diversity that way. Just given your role kind of within academia and also now within pharma, what are some of the changes that you are seeing or would like to see kind of as it relates to getting more women involved in these spaces?
So I think that just with the last few years has been, and I don't want to suggest that it's only within the last few years, clearly women and underrepresented populations more generally have been working on this question for a very long time, and we've been making incremental progress, but I think that is accelerating the importance of things like personalized medicine, really bringing to the fore that, women are not smaller men, that, say ethnic minorities are not, Caucasians with slightly more melanin, that all of these things are really important to factor into how we create and deliver healthcare. And in order to do that efficiently, in order to do that effectively, in order to do that with the greatest efficacy, you need all of these different perspectives at the table. So it's not just about, making space for other people, it's about making the enterprise itself work better for all of the constituents. And so really, I think that effort is picking up more speed. EED and I is kind of a buzzword, and it really shouldn't be, right? It shouldn't be something that, is in fashion more than it was a couple of years ago, but that's the reality of the situation. And if it means that more people come to the table with more concrete plans, with, dollars, then I am all for it. But I do think that also the technology is making it clearer how we can action, the differences that we know are important.
100%, 100%. Yeah, I think that it definitely is very buzzwordy, but I definitely agree with your point of, as much as it is frustrating that it's taking so long, the fact that there is a spotlight on it, I think, is a good catalyst. So definitely agree with all of that. Something that you had mentioned also was personalized medicine. And I think that is also something that can, really drive a lot of valuable change. And kind of on that note, I want to think about personalized medicine, and I think kind of the implications that big data kind of plays into that realm. What does big data mean to you kind of through the lens of a pharmaceutical company? How is that being leveraged to kind of drive this type of change where things are more personalized, things are very individualistic and are very specific to the individual patient?
Right. So many different ways, right? So at the very, very beginning, big data and just the rise in computing power and the complexity of our techniques mean that the actual discovery act, so how we can identify targets, how we can screen compounds, is so much faster. It's so much more efficient than it was before. And so just the efficiency of the research process is growing by leaps and bounds. But also, I think I talked a little bit more earlier about healthcare is not just the medications, it's the kind of the broader society that we live in. Big data, structured data, unstructured data provides so much more insight into the larger context that we deliver healthcare. And so it's not just, the characteristics of the patients that we can, assess in much greater detail, much faster than we could before, and how they interact with the different medications. And that could be, from a genomic perspective or any other perspective, but also kind of the broader healthcare setting, the behaviors that people make, the environments in which they live, the healthcare systems that they have access to. All of these we know are important and key, really, but our ability to pull them into the analysis has been limited, and big data has really opened that up. I think the other thing that I would talk about is maybe just a democratization of the process. and how big data and just, the amount of data and the falling cost of the tools that we need to analyze that data really has meant that so much more people can become a part of that process. And it's not just, people in academia, it's not just people in big corporations, it's not just people who are successful in getting, venture capital, but really so many more people can bring their perspectives and bring their contributions. And that's a fantastic thing. It makes all of us better off. But circling back to your question about what we're doing in industry per se, I would talk about, the importance of, making discovery more efficient and faster. I would talk about the fact that we are really using big data in very innovative ways to make our clinical trials more representative, to make them more efficient, to make them faster, to make them leaner. Especially in oncology, we do things like, synthetic cohorts, where we use historic RWE to generate a control arm, that enables us to bring products to market in a faster way. We use it for pharmacovigilance, where we're able to detect safety signals in a faster and more nuanced way. So really, it permeates the entire structure of the business. I think there are very few parts of it that are not touched by big data.
That's incredible. And I loved kind of earlier when you were talking about not only the developments that have been made within data, but the developments that have been made for everyone to be able to access that and kind of be able to all be a part of the process. I think that's a really important call out. And kind of on this note as well, I'm so curious based off of just your wealth of experience. So I know we kind of talked about big data, but are there any other, whether it is trends or solutions, technologies that you are kind of seeing, just, leveraging your economics background, your academia background, your pharma background, what are you kind of seeing just in the overall health landscape that you're personally excited about?
So I think, and maybe it's not necessarily different from big data, it's maybe a part of big data, but the rise of things like wearables, the rise of, medical digital apps, I think those are really huge in enabling people to participate more in their healthcare, and also maybe moving some of our healthcare decision making and some of our healthcare data collection out of these very artificial environments and into, we use the word real world kind of advisedly, but into settings where people are actually going to use them every day. And I think that transparency and that ability to pull people into a better understanding of their actions and the consequences, and give healthcare providers better insight into their patients' actions and those outcomes is really fascinating. On the policy side, I think, we continue to see a lot of experimentation with different payment models, both inside the US and outside of the US. And that has a huge impact on how healthcare decisions are made, both by healthcare providers and by patients. And so I think, looking at those experiments and what are and are not successful is really interesting, and the willingness of people to kind of try different models and see, what it does give us kind of more outcomes in a more efficient way, better outcomes in a more efficient way.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then another question that I'm just so curious about, your background when it comes to the economic side, and really the work that you do with just decision making in general. Kind of curious, just based off of, also your wealth of experience, what are some of the key drivers that you've kind of seen that when it comes to just general healthcare decision making? So I know you kind of mentioned with the wearables, right? Like the increased in the access, being able to kind of do things on your own in the real world. Are there any other drivers that you can kind of think of that you've particularly seen as it relates to broader healthcare decision making?
Oh, that is such a big question. Let me have a think about that one.
Okay. I think it can mean so many different things.
It is, and it's such a complicated thing, and it's such a personal thing. And it's not just the person and their specific condition. So, you have conditions that are, acute, and that, very serious, very sudden onset, very serious consequences, but maybe the treatment period. So oncology might be a good example of that. Am I going to live 12 months? Am I going to live 15 months? Am I going to live 24 months? Am I going to live 5 years? Those decisions that you make are very different from something like diabetes, where, the onset is slow and insidious. And, if I'm going to, not watch my glucose today, is it going to have a really important impact tomorrow? Maybe 20 years from now. The decisions that people make in that kind of context are extremely different. So I don't know that I have an easy answer for that. I would say, it depends very much on the kind of disease that you have, on the kinds of access to healthcare that you have. In some cases, you can be in a country like the US where pretty much the most technically advanced and technologically advanced healthcare is available if you can access it. And access can mean lots of different things. It means, do you have geographic access? Do you have appropriate insurance coverage? Do you live in the kind of setting that would allow you to take full advantage of that? Are you in stable housing? Do you have access to, a secure food supply? So many different things. Absolutely. That so I don't know that I can answer that question, but I think it's really the most important one that there is, right?
I know I got very existential. I got very deep with this question, but I think you actually did. I think what you really demonstrated was that there is no one size fits all. There is no template to follow. That it is so personal, and it can mean so many different things for so many different people. So I think that in and of itself was a really great reminder that it is really important to think about patients holistically, to think about systems holistically, and not employ kind of slap on one size fits all. So I think that was perfect. All right, awesome. Well, now we're gonna go. I know we have a couple of minutes left, but I really want to get some of these questions answered from our audience because we're definitely seeing a lot, which is amazing. So we have one question that says, what do you see as the biggest challenges currently in pharma and more broadly in healthcare that need to be addressed, and why?
Okay, so I want to start by saying that this is my personal opinion. This does not in any way reflect, the opinions of my employer. But I think the fact that the development enterprise is so complex and so long and so risky, I think is a huge challenge. To get a phase 3 trial through, it's a massive commitment in terms of not just, money, but also time in terms of patient effort. I don't want to discount what it means for us to have patients entrust us with their care, entrust us with, and they're doing it essentially out of a love of science, right? They're not doing it for personal gain. For the most part, there are clearly some people who, this is their last chance, but often, it's people doing the right thing in service of a larger goal. I think if we can make that research enterprise more efficient, we can bring products to market faster. We can put products to market with more verifiable efficacy and safety. If we can do it understanding how that plays out in a more heterogeneous population, I think those are some of the big challenges that we are wrestling with as kind of an industry.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. The next question that we have is, how do you engage doctors to introduce new methods for treatment and diagnostics? What challenges do you encounter in introducing new methods for treatment? So I think kind of around the change management aspect.
Okay, so I would say in general, again, the medical education part of the industry is, a really thoughtful enterprise in terms of how we make sure that our efficacy and safety data is appropriately packaged and described and made available. We do a lot of publication of our science and our clinical trial results so that people can engage with the data for themselves. But ultimately, those decisions about what treatment should be taken up, what treatments are most appropriate, are really driven by the doctors themselves, with physician societies, with treatment guidelines, with a really thorough analysis of the data, and then they kind of come together and make those recommendations to their members. So we can provide the data, we can answer the questions, but it's up to the physicians to make the choice for whether or not the new technology is appropriate for the patient in front of them.
Right, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. And then we have another question. What are the best ways for medtech device startups to get in front of and gain interest from potential pharma partners? Is that kind of within the realm of the work that you do?
It's actually not so much, but I can say that a lot of different industries have technology showcases, which are opportunities for small startups or people with research ideas to network with the business development teams. So, but I can't give any more specific guidance than that, unfortunately.
No, that's very cool though, about like looking out for digital showcases and things of that nature. Incredible. And then this is definitely a question that we love to ask kind of towards the end of our conversation, which is share any words of advice or things that have stuck out, from your career, maybe an advice that you were kind of given that you want to then pass forward to us all.
Oh, I have so much. I've gotten so much really good advice that I could share
with us.
So I would say, two things that have stuck out for me are one, be really open to what an opportunity looks like. Sometimes we have a very, clear idea of what success is, and we're going down that path, and the door opens, and we look at that door, and it doesn't really look like what we thought, our path would be, and so we discount it. I would say, take every opportunity seriously. I would say also be curious. Don't be afraid to ask questions. And if it feels like you think you have.
Oh no. Right when she was about to give some incredible advice, I could already tell. We'll give it another minute for Joanna to hop back on. Joanna, can you hear us? I think now. Oh no. It's about to be some very good advice.
Okay, am I back?
Yes, I could hear you.
There we go.
You left us on a cliffhanger there.
Oh no, what was my cliffhanger? I hope it sounded very profound.
You were about to say some really good advice about, the first one I know you were talking about was, really being able to look at an opportunity and not discount opportunities. So that was the first part of what I heard, but you were on a roll and I was very excited to hear the rest.
So the second part I was talking about was the importance of taking our contribution seriously. If you have an important question, or if you have an interesting perspective, be persistent in bringing it forward. In the same way that you think it has value, other people will think it has value. And I think often we talk ourselves out of speaking up. Or we let, or we fade at kind of the first pushback. I would say just have faith in the value that you bring to the cross-functional collaboration and be persistent.
I absolutely love that. I think that's very important to hear, because I think, at least for I can only speak from my own experiences, but that is very, very, resonating when it comes to just, kind of discounting your own self and your own intuition. So I love that you really called that out.
And I think the last thing I would say, and I think, you and I spoke about this earlier, I just want to put a pitch in general for, some of maybe bigger corporate entities. I have done such fantastic work. I have made such a difference in patients' lives, first at Allergan, now at AbbVie. And I think often when people think about digital tech, they think about, these smaller startups. They think about, they have an idea in their head of what cutting edge looks like, but great work is being done everywhere. Creative, innovative, impactful work is being done everywhere. So I would just want to put in a pitch for considering, us as well.
I love that. Absolutely. Change is happening on so many different levels at so many different organizations. And that speaks to your first point as well of don't discount opportunities. So yes. I love it. Very full circle. That's incredible. Well, thank you so much, Joanna, for just taking the time to chat with us, to share all of your words of wisdom. It was a very enlightening conversation, so I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me and for bearing with my wonky, internet connection.
No, you're good. No problem. Thanks, Joanna. Just wanted to let everyone know that next week we have our next Women Health Tech Wednesday episode, but we have it with a little twist. It will be 45 minutes. And so after our 30-minute interview, you will also have an opportunity to do a live Q&A, live networking session with our guests. So if you're interested, please be ready to tune in after for some networking. Also wanted to let everyone know that we do have our Digital Health Symposium on August 25th. All of the registration information is on the chat, so please be sure to check that out. Wanted to give one last huge thank you to Joanna for just taking the time to chat with us today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Nina, and thank you so much to HITLAB for having me.
So thanks, everyone. And also one last thank you to our sponsors. Goodwin and Witham for sponsoring this conversation. And we'll see you all next Wednesday. Bye, everyone.
Bye.